Commander Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Kepler Station, watching the asteroid miners work in the distance. Their ships moved like bright fireflies against the dark space, cutting precious metals from floating rocks. It was peaceful work, far from Earth and the busy trade routes, just the way she liked it. "Another good day's harvest," said Dr. Marcus Webb, walking up beside her. His white lab coat was wrinkled from a long shift studying mineral samples. "The rare Earth deposits in Sector 7 are richer than we thought." Sarah nodded, sipping her coffee. 2,000 people all working together. No wars, no conflicts, just honest work. She gestured at the view. This is what humanity should be about. Kepler Station was one of 12 human outposts on the edge of known space. Each one was small, peaceful, focused on mining and research. The stations had basic defenses against pirates, but nothing more. Humanity had spread to the stars not as conquerors, but as builders. Captain Liu Zhang entered the observation lounge, his security uniform neat as always. "Commander, we're picking up some unusual signals from the outer sensor grid. Long-range scanners show multiple ships approaching." "Traders?" Sarah asked. "We weren't expecting any supply runs for another week." "No, ma'am. The ships are too big to be traders, and there are a lot of them." Liu's face was serious. "Maybe 50 or more," Sarah frowned. In 3 years of running Kepler Station, they had never seen a fleet that large. "Any response to our greeting signals?" "Nothing yet. They're still 2 days out at current speed." Across the galaxy, Admiral Thexkar of the Zephyrian Hegemony studied the intelligence reports on his command ship. The bridge was dark and sharp, all metal and glowing red lights. His officers stood at attention, their gray skin marked with battle scars. "A human mining station," he said, his voice like grinding stone. 2,000 soft beings digging in rocks like insects. "Should we demand tribute, Admiral?" asked his second officer. "Most species pay rather than fight." Thexkar laughed, a harsh sound. "Humans are new to space. They have no real weapons, no battle experience. This will be easy." He turned to face his fleet command center. "We will take their station and use it as a base. The humans can work for us or die. Either way serves the hegemony." The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 17 species in 300 years. They were experts at war, masters of fear and violence. Every species they met either joined them as slaves or was destroyed completely. It was the natural order of things. "Begin standard conquest protocol," Thexkar ordered. "Send the fear broadcasts. Show them what happens to those who resist us." Back on Kepler Station, Sarah watched the incoming fleet with growing worry. The ships were clearly military, built for war, not trade. Their design was strange, all sharp angles and weapon ports. "Commander," Liu said quietly, "I recommend we go to yellow alert. Something doesn't feel right about this." Sarah agreed. She touched her communicator. "All stations, this is the commander. We have unknown ships approaching. All civilian personnel report to designated safe areas. This is not a drill." Throughout the station, families gathered their children and moved to the protected intersections. The miners outside were called back to the station. Everyone moved quickly but calmly. They had practiced these drills many times. Dr. Webb joined Sarah in the command center. Could they be refugees? Maybe running from some conflict we haven't heard about? "Maybe," Sarah said, but she didn't believe it. The ships moved with military precision, staying in perfect formation. "Liu, what's our defensive capability?" 12 automated defense turrets designed for small pirates. Basic shields that can handle asteroid impacts. The Marine detachment has 90 soldiers with standard weapons. Liu paused. "Against a fleet this size, we couldn't last long in a real fight." Sarah nodded grimly. Kepler Station was never meant to be a fortress. It was built for peaceful mining, not war. Like all the human outposts, it relied on being too small and remote to attract serious threats. The Zephyrian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel just outside the system. 50 warships, each one larger than Kepler Station itself. They moved forward like hungry sharks, weapons already charged and ready. Admiral Thexkar opened communications to the station. His image appeared on Sarah's main screen, gray skin stretched over a skull-like face. His eyes glowed red in the darkness of his bridge. "Human creatures," he said, his voice carrying across space. "I am Admiral Thexkar of the Zephyrian Hegemony. Your system now belongs to us. You will surrender immediately and accept hegemony rule." Sarah stepped forward. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of Kepler Station. We are a peaceful mining operation. We have no quarrel with your people. Thexkar laughed.
Quarrel?
There is no quarrel. There is only conquest. You are weak, we are strong. This is the way of the universe. His expression grew cold. You have 1 hour to surrender. After that, we will take what we want by force. And if we surrender? Sarah asked. Half of you will live as workers for the hegemony. The other half will die as an example. You choose which half. The screen went dark. Sarah looked around the command center. Her officers stared back at her, waiting for orders. These were good people. Civilians mostly, who had come to space to build something better than the wars of Earth's past. Options? She asked. Liu checked his displays. We could evacuate some people in the escape pods. Maybe 100 could get away. And leave 1900 to die? Sarah shook her head. No, we're not abandoning anyone. Dr. Webb spoke up. Sarah, we both know how this ends. Our weapons can't touch ships that size. But maybe we can send a message to Earth, let them know what happened here. Sarah thought about Earth 47 light-years away. The beautiful blue world where humanity had grown from cave dwellers to star travelers. Earth seemed so peaceful now, focused on science and exploration rather than war. Do it, she said. Send everything we can to Earth. All our records, all our research, everything about these Zephyrians. She activated the station-wide communicator. Attention all hands. We are about to face an enemy that wants to make us slaves or kill us. I won't lie to you, our chances are not good. But we are human beings and we don't bow to bullies or murderers. Her voice carried throughout the station, to families huddled in safe rooms, to miners clutching their tools like weapons, to soldiers checking their rifles one last time. If this is our end, we'll face it standing up. We'll show these aliens what humans are made of. And maybe somehow our sacrifice will warn others about what's coming. The Zephyrian fleet moved closer, weapons glowing like evil stars in the darkness. On Kepler Station, 2,000 humans prepared to fight for their lives, not knowing they were about to become martyrs in a war that would shake the galaxy. The hour passed like minutes. Sarah Chen stood in the command center, watching the Zephyrian fleet grow larger on her screens. 50 massive warships now surrounded Kepler Station like wolves around a wounded deer. All civilians are in the safe zones, Captain Liu reported. Defense systems are online, but he didn't finish. They both knew it was hopeless. Admiral Thexakar's voice crackled over the communication system. Your hour is over, humans. You chose death. So be it. Wait, Sarah called out. We surrender. Don't hurt the civilians. Thexakar's laugh was like breaking glass. Too late for that. You had your chance. Now you will learn what happens to those who defy the hegemony. The first shots came without warning. Bright red beams cut through space and slammed into Kepler Station's shields. The entire structure shook like a leaf in a storm. Warning lights flashed throughout the station as power systems overloaded. Shields at 60%, Liu shouted over the alarms. They're using some kind of plasma weapons. Sarah grabbed her communicator. All hands brace for impact. Damage control teams to emergency stations. But even as she gave orders, she knew they were doomed. Each Zephyrian ship was 5 times larger than their entire station. Their weapons were designed to destroy other warships, not just disable a mining outpost. The second wave of fire was worse. Green energy bolts joined the red plasma beams, tearing holes in the station's outer sections. Atmosphere vented into space like blood from an open wound. Hull breaches on level 6 through 12. An engineer reported. Emergency bulkheads are sealing, but we've lost the mining control center. Dr. Webb worked frantically at his console, trying to compress all their data into a tight beam transmission to Earth. Almost got it, he muttered. Just need a few more minutes. The station shook again as more weapons fire hit home. This time the lights went out for several seconds before emergency power kicked in. In the dim red glow, Sarah could see the fear on her people's faces. Shields at 20%, Liu announced. On his command ship, Admiral Thexkar watched the destruction with satisfaction. This was how it should be. The weak crushed under the boots of the strong. He turned to his weapons officer. Target their civilian areas next, he ordered. I want them to understand that resistance has consequences. Sir, the weapons officer hesitated. They're trying to surrender. Perhaps we should. Are you questioning me? Thexkar's voice was deadly quiet. No, Admiral. Targeting civilian sectors now. The third attack was different. Instead of hitting the command areas or weapon systems, the Zephyrian ships focused their fire on the residential sections. Places where families lived, where children played, where people had built homes among the stars. The explosions were massive. Entire sections of the station were blown away, taking hundreds of people with them. Sarah watched in horror as the population counter on her screen dropped from 2,000 to 1,500 in seconds. "They're targeting civilians," Liu shouted, his voice breaking with rage. "They're not even trying to capture the station anymore. They just want to kill us." Sarah felt something cold and hard settle in her stomach. These weren't conquerors looking for slaves or resources. These were murderers who enjoyed their work. Dr. Webb looked up from his console, tears in his eyes. "Sarah, I'm getting reports from the residential levels." The school section is gone." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. 30 children had been in that school, learning about the stars and dreaming of the future. Now they were dead, killed for no reason except alien cruelty. "Keep working on that transmission," she told Webb. "Earth needs to know what these monsters are really like." The attacks continued for hours. Not the quick destruction of a military strike, but the slow, deliberate murder of everything human on the station. The Zephyrians seemed to enjoy prolonging the agony, taking their time to savor each explosion. Sarah's communicator crackled with desperate voices from throughout the station. "Command center, this is medical. They hit the hospital. We've got wounded people trapped in the wreckage. Command, this is engineering. The reactor's overloading. We need to evacuate the lower levels. Sarah." The voice was Dr. Webb, broadcasting from the science labs. "They've broken through to our section. I can see them through the breach. They're laughing. They're actually laughing as they watch us die." Sarah grabbed her rifle and headed toward the science section, but another explosion threw her to the ground. When she got back up, the communication channel was dead. The Zephyrian soldiers that boarded the station were even worse than their ships. They moved through the corridors like hunters, killing anyone they found. They didn't take prisoners or demand surrender. They just murdered everything in their path. Captain Liu organized the surviving Marines for a last stand in the command center, but they were overwhelmed in minutes. Sarah watched good soldiers die fighting aliens who seemed to treat killing like a game. The end came faster than she expected. A massive explosion tore through the station's core and everything went dark. In the silence that followed, Sarah could hear the hiss of escaping air and the distant sound of metal tearing apart. She found herself floating in a damaged escape pod with 11 other survivors. Through the small window, she could see Kepler Station burning like a dying star. 2,000 people reduced to 12 in just 6 hours, but Dr. Webb had managed to finish his work. His final transmission was already racing toward Earth at the speed of light, carrying video recordings of the massacre, data about the Zephyrian weapons, and his last words. "Tell Earth what they did to us. Tell them about the children." As the escape pod drifted away from the wreckage, Sarah could see the Zephyrian ships preparing to leave. They had broadcast the entire attack on multiple frequencies, sending the recordings to other alien species as a warning about what happened to those who opposed the hegemony. Admiral Thek's car stood on his bridge, satisfied with the day's work. Another primitive species had been taught their place in the universe. The humans were clearly too weak to be worth enslaving, so simple extinction would have to do. "Set course for the next human outpost," he ordered. "Intelligence reports 11 more stations in this sector. We'll destroy them all and claim their territory for the hegemony." He had no way of knowing that his simple extinction had just signed the death warrant for his entire species. The transmission racing toward Earth carried more than just records of a massacre. It carried proof that humanity's greatest fear had come true, that somewhere in the dark between the stars, there were monsters who killed for pleasure, and humanity had learned long ago how to deal with monsters. The escape pod continued its slow drift toward the nearest beacon, carrying 12 survivors and a message that would change the galaxy forever. Behind them, the wreckage of Kepler Station spread out like a graveyard, a monument to alien cruelty and the last peaceful moment in human history. The Zephyrian hegemony had just made the worst mistake in their 300-year history. They had attacked humanity's children and laughed while doing it. Soon they would learn that some species should never be awakened to anger. The survivors floated in silence, watching their home burn. They didn't know it yet, but they were already the luckiest 12 people in the galaxy. They would live to see justice done. 2 weeks after the massacre, the escape pod reached the automated beacon at Wolf 359. The 12 survivors were barely alive, surviving on emergency rations and recycled air. When the rescue ship found them, they were nearly dead from starvation and despair. The recordings Dr. Webb had transmitted reached Earth 3 days later. The transmission was picked up by the Deep Space Communications Array and immediately forwarded to the Terran Defense Council in Geneva. President Elena Vasquez sat in her office, watching the massacre footage for the 3rd time. Her hands were steady, but her eyes were cold as winter space. Around the table sat the most powerful people on Earth: generals, scientists, intelligence chiefs, and industrial leaders. "How many confirmed dead?" she asked quietly. 1,988, replied General Morrison, head of Earth's military forces. 12 survivors out of 2,000 people. They killed children, Elena. They targeted the school first. The recordings were clear. Zephyrian soldiers laughing as they hunted down families. Their ships deliberately targeting civilian areas. The systematic murder of everyone on Kepler Station, broadcast to the galaxy as entertainment. Admiral James Harrison, commander of the Sol Defense Fleet, stood up slowly. He was an older man with gray hair and scars from humanity's last major war 50 years ago. "Madam President, we need to discuss response options." "What response options?" asked Dr. Sarah Kim, the science minister. "We have 12 small outposts and maybe 100 defense ships. They have 50 ship battle fleets and obviously no problem with genocide." Admiral Harrison walked to the wall display, showing the solar system. "That's what we've wanted everyone to think," he said calmly. "The truth is somewhat different." He pressed a control and the display changed. Suddenly the solar system was filled with red dots, hundreds of them hidden in asteroid belts behind moons in the shadows of planets. "What am I looking at?" President Vasquez asked. "The real Sol Defense Fleet," Harrison replied. "For 50 years, since we achieved faster-than-light travel, we've been building. Not just ships, weapons, bases, entire military industries. We've been preparing for this day." The room fell silent. Dr. Kim stared at the display in shock. "You built a secret military fleet? How many ships are we talking about?" 2,437 combat vessels, Harrison said, plus support ships, logistics vessels, and planetary defense platforms. We've been reverse engineering alien technology from every species we've met. We've built weapons that no one else in the galaxy possesses. President Vasquez leaned forward. "Why was I not told about this?" "Because we hoped we'd never need it," Harrison replied. "The outposts like Kepler Station were our early warning system. If anyone attacked them, we'd know that humanity had met a species that couldn't be reasoned with." He activated another display, showing technical specifications for weapons and ships. "We call them planet crackers, kinetic bombardment systems that can shatter worlds. We have stealth technology that makes our ships invisible to most sensors. We have AI-guided fighter swarms that can overwhelm any defense." General Morrison nodded grimly. The peaceful expansion, the small outposts, the trade missions, it was all cover. "We've been watching and learning from every alien species we encountered, taking their best technology and improving on it." "And now?" President Vasquez asked. "Now we have a choice," Harrison said. "We can hide behind our defenses and hope the Zephyrians don't find Earth. Or we can show the galaxy what happens when someone murders human children for fun." The president looked around the table. These were good people, leaders who had spent their lives trying to build a better future for humanity. But the recordings from Kepler Station had changed everything. "Show me the projections for a full military response," she ordered. Harrison activated the main display. It showed star charts, fleet movements, and tactical analyses. "Operation Righteous Fury," he announced. "Complete elimination of the Zephyrian hegemony. Not conquest, extinction. The plan was terrifyingly simple. Humanity would strike every Zephyrian world simultaneously, using overwhelming force to prevent any coordinated defense. The planet crackers would destroy their homeworlds completely, while the fleet eliminated any survivors trying to escape." "How long?" Vasquez asked. 6 months to complete deployment. Another month for the actual operation. The Zephyrian hegemony would cease to exist within 7 months. Dr. Kim looked pale. "We're talking about genocide. The destruction of an entire species." "No," Harrison corrected her. "We're talking about justice. The Zephyrians chose genocide when they murdered our people and broadcast it for entertainment. We're just giving them exactly what they gave us." President Vasquez studied the tactical displays. She thought about the children who died on Kepler Station, about families torn apart by alien cruelty, about the Zephyrian soldiers laughing as they killed. "Casualties?" she asked. Military casualties for us should be minimal. We have overwhelming technological and numerical superiority. For them, Harrison paused. Total. We're not taking prisoners or accepting surrenders. This is an extermination operation. The room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Vasquez spoke. I need to be clear about something. This isn't revenge. Revenge would be killing the ones who attacked Kepler Station. This is a message to the galaxy that humanity is not prey. She stood up slowly. Every species out there is watching to see how we respond. If we do nothing, we'll be seen as weak. Other species will attack our outposts, our trade ships, our people. But if we respond with total destruction, they'll fear us, General Morrison finished. No one will ever attack human civilians again. Admiral Harrison, the president said formally, I'm authorizing Operation Righteous Fury. You have full military authority and unlimited resources. I want the Zephyrian hegemony erased from existence. Harrison saluted. Yes, Madam President. What about the survivors? The Zephyrians who aren't directly involved in military operations? Vasquez was quiet for a moment, thinking about the children on Kepler Station. Relocate them to a single world under human supervision. Let them live. But make sure they remember what their empire's cruelty cost them. They can serve as a reminder to the galaxy about what happens when someone attacks humanity's families. The meeting broke up quickly after that. Within hours, secret orders were flowing to hidden military bases throughout the solar system. Ships that had waited in darkness for 50 years began powering up their weapons. Soldiers who had trained for a war they hoped would never come started preparing for battle. In the outer solar system, massive construction facilities that officially didn't exist began producing the instruments of alien extinction, planet crackers, each one capable of shattering a world, rolled off assembly lines that had been hidden in asteroid mines. The Zephyrian hegemony had 300 years of experience in conquest and terror. They had destroyed 17 species and enslaved countless others. They thought they understood war. They were about to learn that they had never faced anything like an angry humanity. The species they had dismissed as weak mining colonists was actually the most dangerous predator in the galaxy, one that had simply been choosing not to hunt. That choice had just ended. Admiral Harrison stood alone in his command center, looking at the deployment orders. 2,000 ships preparing to bring death to alien worlds. It wasn't the future he had wanted for humanity, but it was the future the Zephyrians had forced upon them. Send the message to all fleet commanders, he ordered. Operation Righteous Fury is authorized. Show them what happens when someone kills our children. Across the solar system, humanity prepared for war. 6 months after the Kepler Station massacre, Admiral James Harrison stood on the bridge of the TDS Retribution, humanity's flagship. Around him, the largest military fleet in galactic history prepared for battle. 2,000 human ships filled space like a swarm of metal sharks, their weapons charged and ready. All task forces report ready, Admiral, announced Captain Rodriguez, the fleet coordinator. Planet crackers are in position around 17 target worlds. Strike groups are standing by at 43 military installations. Harrison nodded, his face calm but his eyes burning with controlled fury. For 6 months, humanity's secret fleet had moved through space like ghosts, positioning themselves around every Zephyrian world and military base. The aliens had no idea what was coming. Admiral, called the communications officer, we're receiving surrender offers from 3 Zephyrian colonies. They're saying they had nothing to do with the attack on our outpost. Standard response, Harrison replied coldly. No negotiations, no exceptions, no mercy. They made the rules when they murdered our children. On the planet Zephyr Prime, homeworld of the Zephyrian hegemony, Admiral Thexkar was enjoying a victory celebration. His destruction of the human outposts had earned him promotion to Supreme War Commander. The weak humans had apparently learned their lesson. No more mining ships had appeared in hegemony space. Another species learns to fear us, he boasted to his officers. Perhaps we should find more human colonies to destroy. Their terror broadcasts were most entertaining. None of them noticed the human ships that had been watching their planet for weeks, invisible to their sensors, waiting for the signal to begin humanity's revenge. That signal came at exactly 12 Galactic Standard Time. All units. Admiral Harrison's voice carried across space to every human ship. Commence Operation Righteous Fury. Remember Kepler Station. The first strike hit Zephyr Prime without warning. Massive kinetic projectiles, each one the size of a building, slammed into the planet at incredible speed. The impacts created explosions larger than nuclear weapons, turning cities into craters and mountains into dust. Admiral Thexkar felt his celebration feast turn to ash in his mouth as the ground shook beneath him. "What's happening?" he roared at his staff. "Ships in orbit," an officer screamed. "Massive human fleet. They came out of nowhere." On his screen, Thexkar could see the human fleet surrounding his homeworld like a closing fist. Hundreds of ships, each one larger and more advanced than anything in his navy, but it was the message that froze his blood. "This is Admiral James Harrison of the Terran Defense Fleet," came the cold human voice. "You attacked our outpost. You murdered our children. You laughed while you did it. Today you learn the price of that mistake." More kinetic strikes hit the planet. The Zephyrian Defense Fleet tried to respond, but they were hopelessly outmatched. Human ships moved with impossible speed and agility, their weapons cutting through Zephyrian shields like paper. "How?" Thexkar whispered. The humans were weak. Their technology was primitive. But as he watched his fleet burn around him, he realized the terrible truth. Humanity had been hiding their real strength. The mining outposts, the peaceful traders, the small defense ships, it had all been an act. The humans had been watching and learning, preparing for this moment. A human voice came over the communication system, speaking in perfect Zephyrian. "Admiral Thexkar, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the TDS Vengeance. You remember me? I was the commander of Kepler Station, one of 12 survivors you left to die." Thexkar stared at the screen in shock. The human female from the mining station was alive, and she was commanding one of the ships destroying his homeworld. "Impossible," he breathed. "You were weak. You surrendered." Sarah Chen's face appeared on his screen, her expression carved from ice. "We surrendered to save lives. You killed them anyway. Now you get to see what humans do when we stop pretending to be peaceful." Around Zephyr Prime, the planet crackers began their work. These massive weapons fired streams of projectiles deep into the planet's core, shattering the world from within. Mountains split apart. Oceans boiled away. The entire planet began to crack like a broken egg. "Evacuation," Thexkar screamed. "All civilians to the escape ships." But the human fleet was ready for that too. Every ship that tried to leave the planet was destroyed instantly. No one would escape to carry on the Zephyrian legacy of murder and cruelty. The same scene played out across the hegemony. On 17 worlds, planet crackers turned entire planets into expanding clouds of debris. Zephyrian military bases were hit by waves of human fighters, AI-controlled swarms that moved too fast for alien weapons to track. On the colony world of Zephyr 7, a Zephyrian general tried to rally his forces for a final stand. "We are the master race," he shouted to his troops. "We have conquered 17 species. How can these humans defeat us?" The answer came in the form of a human dreadnought that materialized directly above their position. It was massive, larger than their biggest warships, bristling with weapons they didn't recognize. "This is the TDS Kepler Memorial," announced the ship's captain. "You are standing on land paid for with human blood. Specifically, the blood of 30 children who died in a school when your forces targeted civilians for fun. The bombardment that followed left nothing alive on the planet's surface. In the depths of space, Zephyrian refugees tried to flee the destruction. But humanity's intelligence network had identified every Zephyrian ship, every base, every hiding place. There was nowhere to run. Captain Liu Zhang, now commanding his own destroyer, intercepted a Zephyrian transport full of civilians. His communication officer suggested they accept the ship's surrender. "Did they accept our children's surrender?" Liu asked quietly. "Did they spare our families when they begged for mercy?" The transport was destroyed with all hands. This wasn't war as the galaxy understood it. This was extermination, carried out with cold precision by a species that had finally stopped pretending to be harmless. Every human ship carried recordings from Kepler Station, reminders of why they were here. The other alien species in the galaxy watched in terror as the Zephyrian hegemony was systematically erased from existence. The humans didn't just defeat their enemies, they obliterated them completely. Planets cracked apart, fleets were reduced to debris, an entire species was being wiped out in a single day. On his dying flagship, Admiral Thexkar made one last desperate transmission to the galaxy. "The humans are monsters. They're destroying entire worlds. Someone must stop them. Admiral Harrison intercepted the message and responded on the same frequency, broadcasting to every species in known space. We are not monsters. Monsters kill children for entertainment and laugh about it. We are simply teachers, showing the galaxy what happens when someone mistakes human mercy for human weakness. The destruction continued for 18 hours. When it was over, the Zephyrian hegemony no longer existed. 17 worlds had been reduced to asteroid fields. Their fleets were debris clouds. Their military bases were craters. Of the billions of Zephyrians who had existed that morning, only a few 100,000 survived, civilians who had been off-world when the attack began. These survivors were gathered onto a single planet under human guard, where they would live as a reminder to the galaxy of the price of genocide. Admiral Harrison stood on his bridge, watching the expanding debris field that had once been Zephyr Prime. Around him, his officers worked quietly, their faces grim but satisfied. Justice had been served. Send a message to all human outposts, he ordered. The Zephyrian threat has been eliminated. They can resume normal operations, he paused, thinking about the children who had died on Kepler Station, about Dr. Webb and all the others who had been murdered for no reason except alien cruelty. And broadcast this on all frequencies. Humanity sought peace among the stars. We offered friendship and cooperation to all species. The Zephyrian hegemony responded by murdering our children. This is what happens to species who mistake our desire for peace as weakness. We hope others will learn from this example. The message raced out at light speed, carrying news of the most complete military victory in galactic history. Across known space, alien leaders received the same brutal lesson. Humanity was not prey. 3 months after the Zephyrian extinction, President Elena Vasquez stood in the newly built Kepler Memorial Hall on Earth. The wall showed images of every person who had died in the massacre. Men, women, children, all murdered by alien cruelty. Their names were carved in black stone, a promise that they would never be forgotten. The galaxy has changed, she said to the assembled leaders of a dozen alien species who had come to Earth seeking audience with humanity. The old rules no longer apply. The aliens sat in uncomfortable silence. These were representatives of the most powerful civilizations in known space: the Altarian Republic, the Centauri Trade Federation, the Draconian Empire. A month ago, they had barely acknowledged humanity's existence. Now they came to Earth as supplicants, desperate to avoid humanity's wrath. Ambassador Kethvar of the Altarian Republic spoke first, his blue skin pale with fear. President Vasquez, the Republic wishes to express our horror at what the Zephyrians did to your people. We had no knowledge of their attack on your outpost. Of course you didn't, Vasquez replied calmly, because you, like everyone else, thought humanity was weak. You saw our small outposts and peaceful traders and assumed we were helpless prey. She gestured to the holographic display showing the debris fields where Zephyrian worlds used to be. Now you know the truth. We were never weak. We were simply choosing not to be predators. The Centauri representative, a tall insectoid creature called Zixthera, clicked nervously. The Federation desires immediate trade agreements with humanity. We offer exclusive access to our Jumpgate network and preferential trading status. 6 months ago, your Federation refused to even meet with our trade delegations, Admiral Harrison pointed out from his position beside the President. You called us insignificant newcomers and suggested we earn our place in galactic commerce. The Draconian ambassador, a reptilian being named Sis-Tech, hissed softly. The Empire wishes to discuss mutual defense treaties. Our intelligence suggests the Void Hunters may be moving into this sector and— Stop. President Vasquez held up her hand. All of you, stop. Do you think we're fools? 6 months ago, humanity was beneath your notice. Now that you've seen what happens to species that attack us, suddenly everyone wants to be our friend. She walked to the memorial wall, touching one of the names carved there. Emma Chen, age 7, my niece. She died in the school section when the Zephyrians targeted it for fun. Her last transmission was asking her mommy to come save her. The alien representatives shifted uncomfortably. They had all seen the recordings from Kepler Station. The systematic murder of civilians, the laughter of Zephyrian soldiers as they hunted down families. Here's how things work now, Vasquez continued. Humanity is not interested in dominating the galaxy. We're not conquerors or empire builders. We just want to live in peace and explore the stars. She turned back to face them. But if anyone attacks human civilians again, they will face the same fate as the Zephyrians. Complete extinction. No negotiations, no surrenders, no mercy. Admiral Sarah Chen, now commanding the new Kepler Memorial Fleet, stepped forward. To ensure galaxy-wide peace, humanity is establishing monitoring stations throughout known space. These stations will watch for aggressive actions against any species, not just humans. The aliens looked confused. Ambassador Kethvar spoke carefully. You're protecting other species as well? Peace is indivisible, Chen explained. The Zephyrians didn't just murder humans. They had enslaved 17 other species over 3 centuries. If we only protected ourselves, some other aggressive species would simply take their place. She activated a star map showing human ships patrolling trade routes throughout the galaxy. The new order is simple. Any species that attacks civilians of any other species will face human intervention. We're not asking permission. We're informing you of reality. The Altarian ambassador leaned forward. You're making yourselves the police of the galaxy? No, President Vasquez corrected. We're making ourselves the protectors of the innocent. There's a difference. On the planet Haven, the world where the surviving Zephyrians had been relocated, Commander Liu Zhang walked through the refugee settlement. The few 100,000 survivors lived in basic but comfortable housing, under constant human supervision. An elderly Zephyrian approached him, her gray skin wrinkled with age. Commander, my grandson asks why your people destroyed our worlds instead of just defeating our fleets. Why did you kill billions of innocents? Liu looked at her with cold eyes. Your people targeted our children first. They made civilians legitimate targets. We simply followed the rules your species established. The old Zephyrian bowed her head. Many of us opposed the hegemony's actions. We had no choice. And now your species gets to live as an example, Liu replied without emotion. Your children and grandchildren will grow up knowing what happens when a civilization chooses genocide as policy. Perhaps they'll choose better. Back on Earth, the alien ambassadors were still struggling to understand the new reality. The draconian representative tried once more. Surely humanity desires something in return for this. Protection? Territory? Resources? Tribute? Admiral Harrison almost smiled. You still don't understand, do you? We don't want anything from you except to be left alone to build our civilization in peace. The protection we're offering isn't for sale. It's a gift to the galaxy. But your military must cost enormous resources, Zixthara clicked. How do you maintain such a fleet without tribute from protected species? Human industry is far more advanced than you realize, Vasquez explained. We've been building our civilization for 50 years while the rest of you assumed we were primitive miners. Our automated factories can produce anything we need. She gestured to the window where the blue Earth turned slowly in space. This planet has given birth to the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and we choose to use that danger only to protect the weak. That's what makes us different from the Zephyrians. The meeting ended with new agreements, not treaties of submission or tribute, but mutual cooperation pacts. The alien species would continue their trade and diplomacy as before, but now under the watchful eye of human peacekeepers. As the ambassadors filed out, Ambassador Kethvar paused at the door. President Vasquez, may I ask a personal question? Go ahead. If another species developed weapons capable of threatening humanity, what would you do? Vasquez considered the question carefully. We would hope they would choose to use those weapons as we have, to protect peace rather than impose dominance. But if they chose differently, she gestured again to the memorial wall. The galaxy has already seen what happens to species that murder innocents. After the aliens left, President Vasquez stood alone in the memorial hall, reading the names of the dead. Admiral Harrison joined her, his face showing the weight of the decisions they had made. Any regrets? He asked quietly. About destroying the Zephyrians? No. They chose their fate when they laughed at our children's deaths. She touched another name on the wall. But I regret that it was necessary. I regret that somewhere in the galaxy there were monsters who forced us to become something we never wanted to be. What did we become? Harrison asked. The thing that monsters check for under their beds, Vasquez replied. The species that other species tell scary stories about. The civilization that ended an entire empire in a single day because they hurt our families. She walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful Earth below. But maybe that's what the galaxy needed. Maybe someone had to be willing to do the terrible things necessary to protect the innocent. In the years that followed, the galaxy settled into an era of unprecedented peace. Trade flourished under human protection. Wars became rare, as aggressive species learned that civilian casualties would bring swift and total retaliation from humanity. The debris fields where Zephyrian worlds once existed became memorial sites, visited by beings from across the galaxy who wanted to understand what had happened there. The message was always the same. This is what happens when someone mistakes mercy for weakness. And on a small space station built where Kepler Station had once orbited, Admiral Sarah Chen maintained her eternal vigil. The Kepler Memorial Station served as both a monument to the dead and a warning to the living, a reminder that humanity would never again allow innocents to be murdered for alien entertainment. The galaxy had learned to fear the sleeping giant that was humanity, but more importantly, it had learned that the giant only awakened to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. In choosing justice over conquest, humanity had not just won a war, they had won the peace that followed. The stars belonged to everyone now, protected by the species that had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be prepared for war.